ESPN is proud to present this commercial-free telecast of SportsFigures, supporting education for America's youth.
The following program is part of Cable in the Classroom, a free service of the cable communications industry and your local cable company.
Hi, I'm Chris McHenry, and welcome again to ESPN SportsFigures.
What brings you here today?
Well, I guess it's my job. There's just so many unknowns. Every day I go into work, I don't know if I'm gonna succeed or fail. Like those guys that sell the peanuts. Hand out one bag, you did it, success.
I'm sure you succeed every day.
No, I'm only batting 180.
Batting?
Yeah, I need to get some more hits.
Hits.
I'm a professional baseball player.
And how long have you thought you were a professional baseball player?
SportsFigures. Put your brain in the game.
There are a lot of unknowns in baseball. Like, is the pitch going to be high or low? A fastball or a curveball? And am I going to get a hit or not? Not. That's why batting averages are so important. They tell us what a batter's done and give us some idea of what he might do. They take some of the unknown out of the game. If you want to figure out batting averages, you have to deal with unknowns too. The equation for batting averages looks like this. That's algebra, baby, and it's all about the unknown. To help us figure it out, we've got Troy Glaus. He plays third base for the Anaheim Angels, and he's a 2000 All-Star. His batting average is 284. But does he know how to figure it out? Okay, Troy, talk to me about unknowns.
Well, in algebra, an unknown is a variable, usually represented by a letter.
Oh, like the x or y in an equation.
Yeah, that's the variable, so that's what we're solving for.
Okay, let's make a simple example. 4 plus x equals 5.
In that equation, x is the variable. 4 plus 1 equals 5, so x equals 1.
Yeah, that's simple, right? I mean, you could figure that one out in your head. But let's say you're batting 250, that's 7 out of 28, and you want to raise your batting average to 300. How many hits would you have to raise your average? For that, you'd need an equation that looks something like this.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to figure that one out in my head.
Yeah, me either. But once you know how to use variables, it's not that hard to solve. Let's start with solving for a variable. The equation to figure out batting average looks like this.
B equals H over A.
Spunky kids. Okay, batting average B equals hits H divided by at-bats A. So let's say we're in postseason and Troy has 5 hits out of 12 at-bats. Now, these numbers are not variables because we know them. Any number that we know is called a constant. What we're looking to find is his batting average B. So that's our variable. It's really simple, right? You just divide 5 by 12. It's 416. Let's say that we knew Troy's batting average and the number of at-bats.
Then you can figure out how many hits he had.
Right, so how do we do that?
We would use the same equation.
Okay, let's change our numbers around just to keep it interesting. Let's say that Troy's batting average is 312, and he's had 16 at-bats.
In that case, the equation would equal 0.312 equals H over 16, where H, number of hits, is our variable, also known as our unknown.
Before, all we had to do was divide, and we had our answer. But then we had a variable all by itself on one side of the equal sign. Now, we have a variable and a constant together on one side of the equal sign. All right, this is where the real stuff of algebra gets going. The whole trick is getting your variable by itself on one side of the equal sign. You can think of the net in tennis kind of like the equal sign. It's all about how you cross the net. You'll see. Okay, Troy, what's our first step into the unknown?
Well, we have to get all our numbers on the same footing.
Huh?
Well, we have a fraction on one side, H over 16, and a decimal on the other, 312. Let's make the decimal into a fraction too.
Oh, okay, but how do we do that?
Well, 312 is out of 1,000.
Wait, how do you know that?
Well, batting averages are always done in thousandths.
Oh, why is that?
Carl Ravitch here at Baseball Tonight. When we say a batter is hitting .312, we're just making it simpler to say and simpler to understand. I'm sure you've noticed that batting averages are always a decimal. That's because it's 312 out of 1,000. The batter doesn't have to get 1,000 at bats. The batting average creates a percentage against 1,000. No one knows for sure why it's always been measured out to thousandths, but it sounds a lot better than saying that a player is batting 31.2%.
So as a fraction, it's 312 over 1,000.
Oh, well, we could simplify that.
Yeah, you get 39 over 125. 312 divided by 8 is 39. 1,000 divided by 8 is 125. So it's 39 over 125.
39 1/25 equals h 16ths. Now we got fractions on both sides. So now what?
What we need to do is get the hits h alone on one side of the equal sign.
Right, h equals something, or something equals h. And that something is the number of hits. So how do we do that?
Multiply by the reciprocal.
Reciprocal. What's that all about? A reciprocal of a number is another number that you multiply the first number by to end up with 1. Like this. Say you had a number 6. What's the reciprocal of 6?
1 over 6.
1/6.
Yes! Ding, ding, ding! That's right. 1/6 is a reciprocal of 6, right? It works like this. 6 over 1 is 6, right? Because 6 divided by 1 is 6. So 1 over 6 times 6 over 1 gives us 1 times 6, which is 6, and 6 times 1, which is 6. And 6 over 6 is 1. Oh, this is sort of the net part here. Let's say we have 12 equals 6x. To isolate the x, get rid of the 6. So we multiply that side by 1 over 6. But we have to multiply both sides by 1 over 6. 12 over 1 times 1 over 6 is 12 over 6, which reduces to 2. And we get 2 equals x. Voila! Ooh, but wait a second. How do we know that we can go multiplying all over the place? Is that allowed? You're allowed to do that thanks to the multiplication property of equality. It just means that you're going to multiply both sides of the equation by the same real number, and your equation remains equal. Like this. See? 5 equals 5. Then 5 times 3 equals 5 times 3. It's so simple, really. I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? This is where we left off. 39 1/25 equals h 16ths.
To isolate the h, we can multiply that side by 16, or 16 over 1.
Okay.
And you can multiply the other side by 16 too.
Okay.
16 over 1 times 1 over 16 gives us 1h, or just h. And 39 over 125 times 16 gives us 624 over 125.
So we divide 624 by 125 to get 5. So 5 equals h.
Solving for the variable, we see that if Troy's batting average is 312, that means out of 16 at-bats, he got 5 hits. Solving for variables is pretty simple, right?
Yeah, but all this began with you telling me how many hits I needed to raise my average from 250 to 300.
Right, but now that we know how to solve for variables, it'll be easy. All right, let's start out with the original batting average, 250. Now, we're in the playoffs. You've had 7 hits at 28 at-bats. Now we just need to plug in our constants.
Okay, 250 equals 7 over 28.
Okay, so now we just need to figure out how many consecutive hits you need to be hitting 300. Okay, guys, how are we going to figure this one out?
Well, check it out. We can make a new equation where the result is 300. It's easy because it's what we know.
Okay, but 300 equals what?
Well, don't we have to use what we already know he's hitting? 7 for 28?
Okay, let's try that.
That's wrong. 300 doesn't equal 7 over 28.
300 doesn't equal 7 over 28. We know that. 300 equals 7 over 28 plus something, plus Troy's additional at-bats and hits. And because they're consecutive hits, in a row, let's call it plus C. Hits plus C and at-bats plus C. There, that looks a little better. So what do we do next?
Well, we have to change the batting average decimal to a fraction.
Okay, well, you're good at that.
Well, 300 equals 3 over 10.
Okay, now we can solve it. Okay, here we go again. We want to isolate the variable, C, the number of consecutive hits. We got fractions on both sides of the equation, so let's get rid of them. Remember the multiplication property of equality? We can get rid of the fractions by multiplying by the reciprocal, like we did before. To get rid of the denominator 10, we multiply by 10 over 1. On this side of the equation, that turns 3 over 10 into 3. The same with the denominator 28 plus c. We just multiply both sides by 28 plus c. And on this side, it gets rid of 28 plus c. Now we have to multiply each side. 3 times 28 and 3 times c gives us 84 plus 3c, and on the other side, multiplies by 10 to give us 70 plus 10c. See, we just keep working back and forth, on both sides of the equation, just canceling everything out until we isolate that variable. Okay, this is looking way more manageable. Now we just need to get our variables and our numbers on opposite sides of the equation. So now we just need to subtract 3c from both sides of the equation and subtract 70 from both sides of the equation, and we get 14 equals 7c. Okay, Troy, knock this one out of the park.
Well, you need to multiply both sides by the reciprocal, 1 over 7, and you get c equals 2.
If you're hitting 250 and you got 7 out of 28 hits, to raise your batting average to 300, you just need 2 consecutive hits. That's not so hard, right?
Well, doing the math's a lot easier than getting the hits.
Okay, guys, so what did we learn? Hey, pass that down!
To solve for a variable, you have to isolate it on one side of the equation.
And you do that by using the reciprocal number. That's a number that when multiplied results in 1.
You can do it as long as you multiply both sides of the equation by the same number.
That's the multiplication property of equality.
And that's the key to solving for variables.
Yeah, you just keep working back and forth across the equal sign until you've isolated the variable. I love baseball. And one side of the equation is on one side of the tennis court over here, and over... Wait, Marissa! Wait, it's really simple.
Well, that's it.
We'd like to thank Troy Glaus and our students from Rialto High, Stephanie, Kirsten, Chandara, and Joseph, for helping us out here today on ESPN SportsFigures, Batting the Unknown.
I'm Chris McKendry, back in the ESPN studios. We'd like to thank all of today's athletes for donating their time, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on ESPN SportsFigures.
ESPN SportsFigures is presented commercial-free for educators to tape and use in the classroom. For a free teacher's curriculum, to order the SportsFigures series, or if you have questions or comments, visit our website, sportsfigures.espn.com. You can also call 860-766-2000. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to espn.com. SportsFigures, put your brain in the game.
The preceding program is part of Cable in the Classroom, a free service of the cable communications industry and your local cable company.
ESPN is proud to present this commercial-free telecast of SportsFigures, supporting education for America's youth.